So this is 8 minutes to 10 in the evening, GMT, and 10 minutes to 11 in the UK, British Standard Time on Sunday, 24th of July 2022. We're starting the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, Baby Angel Geronimo editions, Justice for Baby Angel Geronimo editions. And we shall take a general look at what is happening in terms of the mainstream in the UK, the mainstream news, focusing on the Conservatives party election, party members electing the next leader of the Conservative Party. The Guardian Online is running at 7 minutes to 11 British time and 7 minutes to 10 p.m. GMT on Sunday, the 24th of July 2022. The banner ready for Rishi. Now, as he said yesterday in the edition of 23rd of July 2022, Rishi is as bad as Liz Truss. And Rishi has no moral or ethical superiority in terms of the policy or in terms of the actual behavior of his regime if he gets elected, that compared to the regime as fronted by Boris Johnson. And we also said that Rishi Sunak was a persistent follower of the lying agenda fronted by Boris Johnson during the 2016, June 2016, so-called referendum called Brexit. Compared to him, Liz Truss is even worse. She was a Remainer and now she is a Brexiteer. And many of the things that Liz Truss has been saying about the so-called economic policy that she would pursue if she gets in as the leader of the Conservative Party and becomes installed as Prime Minister. Most of the lines being run by the mainstream media about the contest appear to be being prompted by Rishi Sunak supporters. And Rishi Sunak supporters are convinced, based on the populist polling, that so-called grassroots or ordinary non-MP members of the Conservative Party, there are apparently just under 200,000 members of the Conservative Party eligible to vote, that the majority of those, or a significant majority of those members, appear to be supporters of Liz Truss. So based on that reading, supporters of Rishi Sunak, installed in various places in the media and among the members of parliament who have already voted, are kind of running various propaganda lines showing Rishi Sunak being as committed to anti-migrant policies, as committed to racist policies, as committed to anti-poor policies as Liz Truss has been, as Boris Johnson was. So it's not a contest for a moral position, moral high position. It's a contest for the lowest common denominator. The lowest common denominator being the lower they are morally and ethically, the more likely they think the Conservative Party members will support them. That is pure, unadulterated evil. This is not a thing that is appropriate for society, let alone for society which boasts as being one of the world's leading democratic societies, and most certainly not befitting the parliament that the boasters claim to be the mother of parliament. So that's the state of the degenerate Conservative Party at this time. What else is happening? Starmer, who is the political murderer of the Labour Party, according to us, Starmer is saying that he would. What is he saying? Let's check what he's reportedly saying. According to Reuters news agency, Starmer is saying that economic growth would be his target. Labour would prioritize growth, growth, growth. Starmer to spew. Now, while that is absolutely understandable, Starmer is again morally in the land of emptiness. I mean, he is being pictured on a bus sitting between two women, smiling to Q, I think, to camera. Well, he's going to Liverpool on Monday to say that the priorities for the next Labour government will be growth, growth, growth. Now that is something that is as plasticky, as shallow as whatever is being offered by the Conservatives. So we are not witnessing a contest either within the party, the Conservative Party, or a contest between the Conservative Party and we're not witnessing the contest between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party on a moral basis, nor are we witnessing the contest between the two contestants for the leadership of the Conservative Party within the Conservative Party on moral basis, moral standard. Then an update of the events in Pakistan about the behavior of the speaker in the Punjab Provincial Assembly, where the post of the governor had to be filled. And the speaker overruled 10 MPs in the provincial members of parliament from the PTI, that is the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party chaired by Imran Khan. By rejecting the 10 votes, the speaker allowed the son of the deputy speaker, I think the deputy speaker, and the son of the Sharif family member to become chief minister. This has been contested by the Imran Khan party members who have applied to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court during Sunday, 24th of July 2022, ruled that this particular appointee would remain a trustee incumbent in the capacity of a trustee incumbent until Monday, which is Monday the 25th of July 2022, and the Supreme Court will consider the full application against the behavior and the role of the Deputy Speaker in the Punjab Assembly. There is no news from Tower Hamlets, London, East London, which is the leading headline in our main kind of campaign defending the community in the east end of London. As far as the issues of depravity, corruption, criminality, cruelty, and lack of accountability, lack of transparency, fairness, lack of fairness, as represented by the attack mounted over 4 years against the most innocent baby angel Geronimo by the DEFRA, which is the department that is supposedly the department that protects and defends the environment and the animals. And as we've been saying over the last 8 months or so, Keir Starmer is as bad, as depraved, as corrupt as Boris Johnson. Because Starmer endorsed the depraved DEFRA attack on the most innocent baby angel Geronimo, as did Starmer's overhyped shadow cabinet colleague Wes the Weasel Streeting. And most of the mainstream media in Fleet Street have been endorsing the attacks on the baby angel Geronimo. So it's not like Boris Johnson is a depraved criminal who is an isolated entity of criminality, surrounded by people who are not criminals, people in the opposition party, people in the Conservative Party itself, people in the mainstream media, people in the judiciary. Two criminals are mainly at fault for the persistent, savage, poisonous lies confected and perpetrated against the baby angel Geronimo. One is a woman called Christine Middle as in the middle, and Miss as in Miss, so Middle Miss. So what that should be interpreted as meaning is that she has an emptiness where there should be brain, compassion, care. So her middle is empty and it is missing. Christian Middlemiss is supposed to be the chief vet, that is veterinary surgeon, veterinary surgeon in the UK. And the fronter of the depraved DEFRA department has been George Injustice Eustace. So those two operatives have been the main kind of fronters of the criminal attacks, depraved attacks, cruel attacks, heartless attacks on the baby angel Geronimo. And all these attacks have been endorsed by the liar Boris Johnson from Downing Street in the post of so-called Prime Minister. If we move to the High Court, 3 High Court judges behaved over the 4 years as serial rubber stampers of the depraved DEFRA department against the most innocent baby angel Geronimo and his human supporters, personified by Helen MacDonald, the woman in South Gloucester who has been his mother, baby angel Geronimo's mom. Helen MacDonald has other camelids, that is to say, other alpacas, but she has been forced to give considerable time, energy, effort to the defense of the baby angel Geronimo because of the attacks mounted against him and her role, the attacks mounted against her as well as against baby angel Geronimo by the criminals at DEFRA, depraved DEFRA. So I can't think of an example of another non-human creature in the entire known accessible history of humanity who has symbolized innocence and innocence and innocence and innocence in the way that baby angel Geronimo has done. So I suspect that baby angel Geronimo will survive, outlast the traditions and the legacies of the criminals, Boris Johnson and his co-criminals and co-depraved ones, by any number of years, whatever length of time the world survives. So the baby angel Geronimo, we have put him in that position in terms of the narrative, in terms of the factual, contextual, evidential kind of basis and foundations. And baby angel Geronimo is a blessing to the environment, to the world, and a divine blessing. The baby angel Geronimo, we cannot stress it highly as to how complete our solidarity is with the baby angel Geronimo and how that solidarity exists and prevails throughout every single moment of time and how that will continue forever. Because baby angel Geronimo is unique, as we have said, and baby angel Geronimo is the leader, spiritual, ethical, moral leader, especially the leader for justice. The leader, baby angel Geronimo, is the symbol of leadership in the campaigns for justice for all the victims and targets of demonization, defamation, harassment, misrepresentation, misinformation created by the likes of DEFRA and the likes of Boris the Liar Johnson. As for Boris Johnson's legacy, the Fleet Street commentary collectively is now almost 50-50, if not more than 50, against him. And with the passage of every day, Boris Johnson's image is being kind of diminished by the introduction of items that are hitherto not known, but they're being released. And Johnson's desperate, typically congenitally dishonest, desperate attempts to increase the membership of the House of Peers, that is the UK upper house, is under scrutiny and is being condemned. And the condemnation is coming from members of the House of Peers itself. According to the reports, there are already more than 800 members of the UK House of Peers. Now, this is too many. It's out of proportion, and it's completely an excuse. It's a platform for rewarding criminals. And Johnson, being a criminal, proven criminal and a convicted liar, is reported to be plotting to add another 30 or 40 members to the existing members, 800 plus membership of the House of Peers. Now, of course, this is not something that anyone will refer to in the media, in the published media, that why is Johnson so desperate to add so many people to being parliamentarians without any election and without any evidence that they're fit for purpose? And there must be some kind of benefit he is getting. What is the benefit has not been identified or is not being identified as at present. But there must be, logically, big question marks as to why the serial liar, serial adulterer, serial deceiver, Boris Johnson has been even allowed to indulge in this stupid ambition. It's like he has got hold of the power available to the holder of the post of prime minister in a state which is worse than the evil state, where there is no accountability and nobody can hold him to account, let alone nobody can actually stop him doing the bad things, new bad things, worse bad things than the last worst bad things, the worst bad things that he has done. 3 years, December 2019 to 2020, 2021, just under 3 years since the election of 2019, the UK general election 2019, which was the kind of process whereby Johnson was allegedly able to get the landslide majority of 80 members. Now, as the House of Commons uses the simple majority, which is one, majority of one, the majority of two would be enough. If the majority of two subsisted, that is to say, if it continued without any of the members dying, and as a result of a by-election that followed, the Conservatives losing that particular seat. But any number of scandals could take place, but the majority of 80 cannot be reduced to even 50 in the foreseeable future, or the remaining period of the life of the current parliament. So whoever is prime minister is absolutely able to massively abuse the post of prime minister and make Brenda collude with them and give the nod or the stump to any number of criminals and bribers, becoming members of the House of, as they say, quote, lords, that is the House of Peers, Peers. And as there is no written constitution in the UK, nobody can say that Johnson has actually broken the constitution. They can say that he is behaving at odds with the tradition of his predecessors who left office and didn't behave in that way. That is to say, massively increase the size, the numbers of the House of Peers. He can't do that by increasing number of members of parliament, because that strictly requires a clear election, and that cannot be done because there is no vacancy now, there is no by-election, and there cannot be 30 by-elections where the Conservatives will actually win 30 of the by-elections. In the case of the House of Peers and giving the peerages, no principle of constitutionality applies because there is no constitution. Compare on the same day that we are talking about, Pakistan, there is a constitution in Pakistan. And the Supreme Court is being asked in the application, in the petition, to scrutinize the application of Article 61A, I think, in the Constitution. Let's see what their actual report is saying about the Constitution of Pakistan in the case of Punjab. So there are various editions, various periods, various kind of sessions of the Pakistan Parliament has been updating the Pakistan Constitution. Essentially, there are various aspects of the Constitution that are being invoked and being mentioned as having been broken by the Deputy Speaker of the Punjab Assembly in the provincial Punjab Parliament. And that is going to be discussed and examined in considerable detail during the sitting of the Supreme Court on Monday. And it will happen in a few hours time when the court doors open in Pakistan, in Lahore, in the Punjab province. But in the UK, there is no constitution. There is no reference to the constitution. There is only maximum, at most, is a reference to the conventions. So as the conventions, by definition, are not compulsory, Boris Johnson ignored the convention. So there are two items in the Guardian. On 23 hours ago, the one that says Boris Johnson's plan to create large number of new peers. So what is the detail? The detail is the House of Peers, yeah, House of Lords. So the Boris Johnson's plan to create large number of new peers comes under fire. So the Speaker of the House of Peers raises concerns about public loss of confidence in Parliament due to huge quantity of new and planned peers. So let's see and it's a Nadeem Badshah. Is a byline is by Nadeem Badshah and it's posted at 22:47. 22:47 GMT. And it says Boris Johnson's plans for a major list of peerages has come under criticism, with the Lord Speaker saying it could erode public confidence in our parliamentary system. Now, let me dispel that immediately. Public don't have any confidence in our parliamentary system because there is no real constitutional parliamentary system in existence to begin with. And public mostly don't have any confidence in the parliament, except when massive propaganda, as has been witnessed during the June 2016 Brexit madness, massive propaganda is inflicted on the majority of the people who we describe as the Little Englanders, who are dumb and stupid and racist and completely ignorant. Most of the people who are thinking, rational, and are able to examine the facts in front of them have had no confidence in the integrity of the parliament in the UK. In fact, for hundreds of years, parliament has been behaving contemptuously to the concept of democracy, accountability, fairness, etc., etc. All these scandals that Boris Johnson has been, if you like, involved in, have been allowed to take place in the first place because there is no actually accountable parliament that holds the incumbents, either as prime minister or as members of cabinet or other members of parliament, to accountability. That is the reason why Johnson has been allowed to carry on, without any clothes. And nobody has been pointing out that he has been completely nude and naked all this time. And this is the problem that actually takes a commentary to the political murder committed of the Labour Party by Keir Starmer. The fact that Starmer has been reported during Sunday, 24th of July 2022, as plotting to spew in Liverpool on Monday about his plan to go for growth if he gets to be prime minister following an election. Keir Starmer is completely blind, intentionally blind, to the corruption and the corrupt criminality serial criminality and lying and abuse of Boris Johnson. I mean, to say that his main focus would be to promote growth, growth, growth is like somebody saying, so let's say somebody in charge of driving a vehicle, that they would be trying to stay on course and take to the next des- final destination, the vehicle. Unlike the Caledonian sleeper a few days ago, which was found to have stayed in Glasgow, despite the fact that it was cold sleeper and it was passengers were invited on board and they went to bed as they actually boarded a sleeper on the assumption that it was going to travel and get to London in due course. When they woke up the following day, they found that the train had not left Glasgow. So Starmer saying that he would focus on growth, growth, growth is an empty slogan, typical of an empty mind, empty head, and a corrupt, dishonest head. Because saying that he would focus on growth, 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 and not talking about all the lies, all the falsification and falsehoods that Johnson has fronted, and Johnson fronted regime has actually committed and is in committing, means that Keir Starmer himself knows that he is not fit for purpose, that he is going to kind of front a party, Labour Party labeled kind of government that will not really address the nitty gritty, the day to day problems and needs of the majority of the people in this country. So it's misfit, unfit, dysfunctional. And there is no narrative. There is no narrative abroad. That is to say, there is no current dominant narrative to be found in the mainstream media or in the outputs of the various members of parliament of whatever party that actually addresses what Starmer has left out of his package plotted to be delivered at the expense of the people in Liverpool later, well, on Monday. There is no, this country, I mean, the main opinion writers have said, I mean, increasingly they have been saying that Boris Johnson, has been the worst incumbent in the office of the British Prime Minister since the post of Prime Minister was created 300 years ago. That is true. But that doesn't mean that the fact that they are saying that doesn't mean that they are going to be interested in holding to account whoever becomes the next incumbent. And they're not saying what should be actually put in place of the blankness called the conventions and the emptiness of the lack of a written constitution. All the British mainstream media, including the Guardian, the Observer, and the Daily Mirror, who pretend to be not nepotistic in terms of kind of little English mentality, are as bad in ruling out the existence of the whole world. They actually think, or their editorially twisted minds end up presenting the Guardian's coverage as being the coverage done by a Little Englander outlet. For example, as we keep saying, and we have to say this, because it's the most compelling aspect of the failure of the UK parliament and UK kind of democracy, so-called. When the so-called Second World War, which we call the Second European War, ended in 1945 and was followed 3 years later by the creation of the United Nations Organization. We say that the most important positive aspects of the creation of the United Nations, we are leaving aside the Security Council, the creation of the Security Council for this edition, but the most important positive aspects of the creation or the consequences of the creation of the United Nations were the contents of the declarations, universal declarations. And those were absolutely long overdue for the world, for the states and for the humanity and the world, because they were actually in the domains of enlightenment, replacing darkness. And if a country is to be mentioned as representing that darkness, it is the country that is ruled by the narrative, by the hateful falsehoods containing the Brexit propaganda. And I'll come to showing how the Guardian, which obviously would claim to be against Brexit, the Observer would claim to be against Brexit, the New European would claim to be against Brexit, but essentially they are not only not against Brexit, but they are complementing Brexit, and they are allowing Brexiteers to perpetrate additional aggravating lies. Years after the Brexit was perpetrated, and the lies are now increasingly harming people's basic needs and basic rights. Now, in the land of Brexit, or a Brexit Britain, darkness is a land of Little England, or Little Englishness, which actually convinces its adherents or followers or its fans, that is in the fanatics sense, that Little England, geographically very small compared to the whole planet, but because it is so superior to the rest of the world's countries, Little England is bigger than the combined wisdom and traditions of the whole rest of the world. This is the only explanation to why, or of why, the Guardian, in its journalism, in its editorial, in its commentary, does not refer to the international legal framework, the international rights framework. The international rights framework and the international legal framework were and are only possible with the existence and the continuing existence of the United Nations, with all the declarations and the ratification of the declarations. Many of the declarations, most of the key declarations of rights have been ratified by the United Kingdom, successive United Kingdom governments. And yet, the Guardian never mentions the fact that each and every act of the Conservatives and each and every act of the British Parliament, whenever it pursues the latest grotesque, dark age move fascistic move, racist move, is in contravention of hundreds of existing international conventions, international treaties, international charters, international agreements, to which, to all of which, the United Kingdom has been a signatory throughout the relevant time since the ratification, so since the items and the articles and the instruments were enacted and brought into being. Because if they did do that, if they had done that, that is to say, refer to the various breaches of the conventions and the articles and the declarations and the agreements, then the public would begin to exercise their intellects and come to the conclusion that this is a country, this is a state that is totally out of order. This is a failed state already, not failing, but it is a failed state which has no legitimacy in the context of the examination of its behavior by the collection of ratified instruments that it itself has actually ratified. But the commentariat in the Guardian, the Observer, and the comparatively small-sized ones on the Daily Mirror, and the small-sized one on the Independent, the I newspaper, fail. They fail to mention the existence of the United Nations Organization. They fail to mention the very serious, substantial impact and implications of the creation of the United Nations. And they fail to compare the darkness of British state with the enlightenment of a state that would be in compliance with all those ratified declarations, agreements, charters, and so on. And the Guardian is guilty. The Guardian is as guilty of racist little Englishness with regard to that as is the Rupert Murdoch's Dirty Digger Scum newspaper. And so therefore what we have in front of us in terms of the sick state of the UK is that it has been already ethically, morally, and in terms of the blindness and defiance of the ratified treaties, agreements, charters, and conventions, international conventions. These are written ones. In a state of darkness. So we have to finish this edition at 19 minutes to midnight in the UK and 22:41 GMT.